Well, hey guys, welcome back to another Stream Team Beekeeping Chat. Bruce, good to see you. Glad that you're in here. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Looking forward to talking a bunch about bees and a really fun Q&A with Bruce and I tonight. Our buddy Brian is on a well-deserved little time away from the homestead there. Bruce, he's probably getting sunburned and got sand between the toes and everything else, huh?
Yeah, it looks like it from the pictures for sure.
Yeah, he's not rubbing it in or anything, is he?
Not at all. Nothing like when I send you guys pictures of 70-degree weather with the American flag in the middle of January or
Just
February,
doesn't have the
something like
same
that.
effect to you than it does to me. But
No, no,
glad he's
yeah.
having a good time. It's always good to be able to get away and kind of get reset and regroup and all that kind of thing. So, Brian, I hope you're not listening to this right now. There's much better things to be doing on vacation. But, anyways, hope you're having fun. We'll see you next time. So, Bruce, it's up to me and you to talk about bees tonight. We're going to have to find a way to manage.
I don't know. That's really tough, isn't it? Talking about bees.
You get people, yeah, you get us goobers love to talk about bees. They just go on and on and on. So again, thanks everyone for joining in tonight. Looking forward to chatting about bees tonight. If you've got questions, put them in all caps, and Bruce and I are going to try our best to get to as many of those as possible. I think by now everyone's kind of full to the brim on hearing about all the bee losses and all that kind of thing. I think we get that, we understand that, and it's probably time to move past all that and start talking about what do we do to grow, what do we do to rebuild, what do we do to regroup, what's that look like, and start to put plans together to do the best that we can with where we're at with things. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that tonight too. Bruce, before we get going, can you talk to us a little bit about what your beekeeping has been like in Alabama the last week or so?
Yeah. Hey, Greg, can you star that comment from Sam up there about the yellow jasmine? That's something I want to talk about later. It's been busy down here. I for about 4 weeks straight, I was really busy. When you came down, Greg, we had a real busy weekend that weekend. Awesome time. Did a video on it. The next couple of weeks after that, I actually did splits. I placed 55 queens, and then I went by the following week and checked, and that video just dropped as far as queen success. Overall, about a 90% success rate on those queens. There are a couple of those I think that, I've just looked at them a little bit the other day, and there might be a few of those that are, I'm not sure if they're going to make it or not, but I think, I'm still going to say 90% is pretty darn good. And and a couple of the reasons, the ones that didn't get accepted or that failed were because of beekeeper error. Two of them died out, and another one, I think we actually pulled the original queen when we pulled the split, and she ended up in the split instead of the new, and so I'm sure they just dispatched the new queen as soon as she got released. But I think we ended up with, 85 to 90% anyway, for sure. And so that was pretty darn good, I thought, for those early splits. Last week I went into the bees, and I didn't actually shoot video on this, but I was down in Slocum. And Greg, you remember how strong those colonies were.
Yeah.
Now I split when I did the splits the very first week when Jeremy helped me. We split almost everything at Appleton that needed to be split. We pulled splits from almost all those, so we didn't have a lot of queens left over to be able to split the ones at Slocum. They probably needed it just about as bad. And we got, I think, 5 or 6 splits pulled there at Slocum, if I remember right. But the rest of those colonies were still booming. Haven't really done anything with those, and so I went to look at them last week just to kind of peek in. I hadn't peeked in on them in 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm approaching a swarm situation. I didn't see swarm cells really. A couple I peeked in, but they are packed out. Brood, food, everything coming in like crazy, and I'm really afraid I'm going to end up with a swarming situation if I don't do something about it. And so I don't know. We're going to see what happens this coming weekend. I'm going to go down there. We've got some weather moving in. Of course, it's been beautiful and sunny early in the week, but later in the week, it's going to, Friday, Saturday, when I have a chance to get in the bees, it's supposed to be kind of a little bit iffy. Maybe the rain's moving in after maybe it's moving in like late Saturday night. So maybe I can get everything I need to get done Friday and Saturday. And hopefully I'll be able to do some things, and maybe we could talk about plans or maybe some suggestions on how to handle that situation a little bit later on in the chat. But that's kind of where I'm at. I'm real pleased so far with how the bee season's going. I'm a little worried that I'm going to even still trying to get ahead of it. Still feel like I'm behind a little bit. We do have, and Sam mentioned the yellow jasmine in his comment. We have that blooming around here, and that last year that really kind of set my bees back. I wondered what was going on. They were looking beautiful, and then all of a sudden they started looking kind of sick, and the brood pattern wasn't as good, and they just looked almost like a foul brood type look about them. But
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure it was the yellow jasmine, because as soon as that stuff quit blooming, they bounced back, and we had a tremendous year last year. So I've never really noticed it being as much of an issue. Maybe I just didn't recognize it before what it was. But last year I noticed it blooming everywhere, and my bees had about a 2 or 3 week period where they just kind of look sick. It supposedly the yellow jasmine, you'll see some dead bees around here or there. It doesn't really kill the colony, but it definitely will weaken the colony. And the bees they just don't act. They're kind of get a little bit sick. And so I haven't seen a lot of evidence of sick bees yet. They seem pretty darn strong, but it is blooming around. So I kind of anticipate a little bit of bee loss, population loss. But typically, unless it's a weak colony, I don't think it'll actually, at least in my case, it doesn't actually destroy or it won't kill a strong colony, but it will weaken it for sure if you're not careful. So maybe we can discuss later on, Greg. I don't know if you have any suggestions on how to deal with yellow jasmine, if there's ways to kind of combat that later in the chat as well. So there's a couple of topics we might be able to discuss, but it's just I've been thinking all last couple of days. I've been a little bit sick. I think I developed the flu maybe late Saturday, Sunday. I felt bad. Monday I stayed home from work. I felt awful. Yesterday I survived work, and today I feel kind of back to normal by this afternoon. And so I went through some little 24-hour, 48-hour thing. But I've been thinking the whole time, man, I need to get out there and I got to do something with these bees before they swarm. And I'm thinking about doing a cloak board, raising some queens and trying to do some splits, but I hope I'm early enough. I hope I'm going to catch it in time to do that. So anyway,
Yeah, when you were talking about jasmine, I was thinking, man, what if we just get a bunch of local feed on the colonies? And Zach, I think he knows what he's doing, obviously. So he's got to outfeed the jasmine. So maybe that's a time where you get bucket feeders or frame feeders or get feed on those colonies, so
okay.
they're not to help at least dilute how much of that is inside of the hive there. But let me, what I can probably do. See, I can't do it from this mobile setup, but I'm going to reach out. I'm going to shoot. You know who would know the answer to this is, let's just do this live here on the air. Um, I know someone who's got a lot of experience with John Turpin, with
Jasmine.
yellow jasmine, and it's John Turpin. I know he visited a bunch of apiaries commercial outfits in the heart of yellow jasmine last year. I don't wonder if strong microbials, how effective that was. But let me shoot John a message here. I'm going to say, "Hey, John, got any ideas on how to combat yellow jasmine?"
I think Zach probably has a good idea there, and I think Sam said he's trying to feed a little bit too. Maybe that's the way to combat it. If you actually because the bees will go out and forage, and if there's nothing, I don't think it's their favorite. I think if there's other stuff blooming, maybe they don't get into it as much, or maybe it just dilutes it a little bit. But if it's the only thing around, it can really take a toll.
All right, well, cool. Well, I texted John. We'll see what he says there. But I mean, that makes sense. If that's what's available, the question, because he goes to, well, they're still going to go out and forage and gather, so they're still going to bring some of that back. But if that's maybe diluted by at least 50% if you're feeding them on top, I would think something like bucket feeding, where I mean, if you gorge feed, I guess they'll be gorged on that and they'll start to store. So maybe that would be better than a bucket feeder is heavy gorge feeding. I don't know. That'd be interesting. If you're listening tonight and you're in a yellow jasmine area, and you've seen kind of ill effect from that, what have you done to combat that? That'd be some good information to get out. Bruce, those colonies that you and I visited, when I was there, boy, you had drones that were sexually mature, and it looked like you weren't too far away from Brian. Look at this guy; he just can't get enough of the stream team. Brian, good to hear you or see you. Look at this: sunburnt, hashtag sand on the toes, hashtag can't hear from sand. Well, hey, hope you're having a good time there, Brian. We miss you. Look forward to seeing you next week. That's cool. I wonder, those colonies, Bruce, that were looking so jammed and so packed out. Maybe you mentioned it a little bit ago when I was zoning out there. Have you? have you started to see any queen cells forming in any of those colonies yet?
Last week when I went in, I saw some cups, but they weren't charged yet. I didn't go
Okay.
through them in great detail. I'm going to try and dig into those. My focus this coming week is going to really dive into the ones that we did not split and just go assess what's going on. I'm going to convert one of them for sure, I think, into a cell starter finisher, maybe try the cloak board out. That's one of my goals with whichever one I find. I'm going to go to Slocum and do that probably tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to try and go down there after work and just slide that cloak board in there and see what happens. And then I'm going to Saturday, Friday, my plan is to maybe try to actually put the slide in there and then maybe graph Saturday or something like that. I'm still playing with my game plan. We had Matthew on here, and he really loads them up almost like a cell starter on top of the cloak board. I may just try and go back to the more traditional way without reversing it around. I may let them kind of like have the I may kind of try to block the lower entrance. This traditional way to do a cloak board is to put the divider in, make sure you got the things the way you want them, and put it which is to the queen excluder, and then kind of block the bottom entrance and have the bees start using the top entrance. Get used to that, and then seal them off and open everything back, or seal them off and open everything back up so they can go out both entrances. Anyway, that's the traditional way to do it. I haven't decided exactly what I want to do, but it's going to be an experiment for me. I'm going to use the cloak board though. I bought one. And so I'm going to pick one of those colonies for that. And then the rest of them, I'm going to just I did try to equalize a little bit, pull some frames of brood out of those and put them in the new splits and try to just pull some of the brood out, pull some resources out. But as I was pulling those resources out, I didn't really see any queen cells that had any charged queens developing or any eggs that I think I saw one egg in one of them, maybe. I can't remember, but it wasn't like they've just started going into swarm mode yet. But that can happen fast. If I went in them last Saturday and that's what I saw, I might go in them Friday and they might just be ready to swarm or even in the trees already. So they can switch and they can move into that mode really fast. And so I'm concerned about it. And I'd like to just split them and break them all down. But once again, I don't have the queen availability. And I could just use queen cells from those colonies, but some of them are still a little bit on the spicy side. If they're the Hawaiian queens, I'm cool with just using queen cells on those, but I'm a little worried about breaking them down and ended up propagating those genetics. I'm really working hard on that. So as I go through them, I hope I have time to do all this. As I go through them, I'm going to try to kind of look at all the characteristics. What's their attitude? How is it productively looking and everything? And if it looks like a really good colony that I want the characteristics and the attitude, I'll just go ahead and maybe break those out into multiple splits, at least enough to hopefully slow down the swarming the swarming attitude or the swarming tendency that they're snapping into. But I'll probably just, I don't know if the wise thing to do is to move the queen away in that situation. There's so many ways you can do it. And I've tried about everything and almost everything works. But I usually end up with some swarms every year just because I'm not down there. I'm not there all the time managing them constantly. And so I usually do pretty good. The ones I split early usually don't have issues with swarming, obviously, but the ones that I don't get split soon enough, those can end up in the trees if you're not careful. And some of those colonies have the potential to make a lot of honey this year. So I'm going to find out in a couple of days. I've just been kind of just nervous on pins and needles waiting to get down there, and I just haven't been able to get down there. So we'll see what happens. But I've seen drones everywhere, but they really haven't snapped into that swarm mode yet, or at least they had not from the ones I went through last weekend.
Is your flow still just kind of trickling in? It's not getting heavy yet?
Man, it just seems like it kind of, in Slocum, actually, I really probably should have shot some video, but it was starting, it was coming in pretty good. I'm not sure what it is, but something is coming in pretty good. But no, there is no, like the official flows have not started yet. Like the privet is just starting to leaf out. It's not blooming yet. And of course, the tallow is not here yet. So the big flows have not started. So whatever it is coming in, it's just something else. It might be some mustard coming in, some of the wild mustard. It might be just some other things from somewhere coming in. But the actual, what I would call the flow is not, the big ones haven't kicked in yet. The one traditionally big ones that we have. But they're finding it somewhere. I'm not sure what it is. They're finding something somewhere.
Yeah.
So
What's interesting to think about is, we all in our mind kind of have this timeline on when the bees get to a certain look, then this usually happens, and the thing happens if we've got all this extra nectar or forage or things coming in. like for us, when our bees get to uh, the density that yours were, for me, I'm automatically thinking, okay, it's within a week we're going to have we're going to have some cups that are charged, and then a little after a week it's going to be capped over, and that's the timeline that we see. And what a lot of folks I don't think know or haven't had the opportunity to appreciate is that I think one of the nice things about southern beekeeping is like you've got you have these timelines that the bees are on from this build-up phase to swarm phase looks a lot different. It's a window of time that might be like this because you've got the constant trickle ins, and you're able to look at, and it's a longer timeline. Where at home, everything you're it seems like you guys have a ramp up where things start to go, and it's this much longer ramp up time. Where at home, when things build up and look like that and they kick off, it goes like this and it goes whoop, and there's such a drastic uptick on when everything kind of launches off. That this last little, how long has that been since I've been there, Bruce? 3 4 weeks?
It's been a month.
Like
It's been
it's been
a
a
little
month.
over a month. Yes. Well, it was the 31st of January. So what, 5 or 6 weeks?
So that like you've had that time frame just doesn't even exist at home, because everything just kicks in and goes. And so what's interesting is it seems like yours, it's not delayed. You have these prolonged periods in between all
Mhm.
of these actions that we just don't have. We don't see it
Well,
at home. It's just so hot and heavy. And you got to make quick choices and make a best
yeah,
call. It's a lot different where you guys are at, it seems.
it is, but we do have like, when you were here, they were building up, but then like a week or two later, it was almost like there was nothing coming in. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
it'll be a trickle, a little bit of something coming in and get some stimulated. Then they just like, you're worried about I'm starving. And then, so there, there's really not a big flow of any kind coming in. It's just kind of whatever they can find. And I think there is a pollen source coming in. So they do start to build up, and now there are swarms that are happening around here because you see people posting on Facebook, they're catching swarms, and there may have been some swarms of some of my bees. I just haven't been in them enough to see. I know I split them hard enough that those hopefully won't swarm, but Toby Reeder says he's not far from me. He's actually a little bit north of me. He says he has a bunch of cherry laurel blooming and also some dewberry. And so, like I say, I haven't really looked and noticed what's blooming. There probably are some things blooming. I'm not sure what all the different flowers are. There are some white flowers blooming out there that are kind of they're everywhere, but I don't ever see bees on them. I'm not sure what they are. And but I do know cherry laurel I think is a source for honey or for nectar or for pollen, and the bees like that. And so it's kicking in. I mean, it's starting to happen right now as the spring is unfolding before us. And I like the Bradford pears are blooming, starting to bloom now. The fruit trees are starting to bloom, and so we're here at it. And so I got to get on top of it. It's like the last week or two that it's really kind of started to kick in big time. And but it's just all these kind of what I would call the supplemental flows, like the fruit trees, the different things. And I
Yeah.
guess if you're right on an orchard where you have nothing but fruit trees, you would get a nice flow from that. But it's kind of hit or miss. The Bradford pears I don't think are a great source for nectar or anything. They're really pretty when they're blooming, but anyway, I just know something's coming in. It may be a combination of all the different things. I'm not sure what it may even be. Unfortunately, maybe some of that yellow jasmine, whatever it is. They're right there. Like I said, I did see some cups coming in, like they were almost prepping to get into swarm mode. And so when you start to see those, you're right there at it. And so I hope I don't go out there Friday and see 3 or 4 swarms hanging in the trees. And if those big colonies swarm, they're going to be some big swarms because there's a lot of bees in those colonies. So anyway, that's kind of, we'll see. I'm just trying to keep. It's kind of like I feel like I did a better job this year of keeping them alive and somewhat healthy, and so I'm just kind of trying to hang on. I'm kind of like that cowboy trying to ride the bronc right now, just trying to stay. Instead of just kind of trying to survive and trying to just fix problems and errors all winter long. I've been trying to stay ahead of the curve a little bit. And because of that, I think overall my bees look pretty good and pretty healthy. I do still have some that are having issues a little bit here or there, but overall, I think my bees look as good as they ever have. It's been kind of fun to see, but now I'm a little bit overwhelmed about how I'm going to take care of them all and stay ahead of them from this point on, because it's real, right? Like right now, probably a couple of weeks ago, I mean, when you were here, it was like go time, but now is everything's kicking in right now. And so it really is. There's no holding back now. You're going to take care of them. They're going to swarm. Bottom line, that's where we're at right now. So we're at that point you discussed where we're at the point where it's just going to explode like you described earlier.
Okay. That's cool to know though, because like when we get to the point, everything hits and it's just like boom, boom, boom. It seems like it
Yep.
happens so fast.
Yep.
All right. So right now, mid-March, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being completely squared away, let's go, versus 0, like, oh my gosh, I'm not prepared. It's all falling apart. Right now, mid-March, where are you on the dialed in scale, Bruce? There it is.
I'm about I'd say a 6 or a 7, probably better than usual, but every week
6 or 7.
yeah, probably a 6 or 7.
Oh my gosh, Bruce, what can we do
What
to
were you
get you to a 9? What can we do to get you a 9 today? How can we
just
get you to a 9?
just make more hours in the day and more days in the week. That would be a good place to
Yeah.
start.
Is that what you think your limiting factor is right now? Is just
Oh,
not enough
100.
time to do exactly
Yeah.
what you know can. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Like I could have ordered more queens. I could have done twice as many splits, but I just, I don't have the time. I really didn't have the time to make, 56 splits in a weekend. So I had to divide that into 2 weekends of about 25 or 30 splits. And that still is only like half of my colonies, So then what do I do? And some of them weren't strong enough to split, but a lot of those would have been. And so
that takes a lot of extra equipment, a lot of extra
it
frames, a
does.
lot of extra
Exactly.
feed.
Exactly.
It all adds up. Sometimes you just think, well, is it better to? At some point, Bruce, this conversation has to go to Bruce has too many bees that are nice. And Bruce has to start jamming these rascals in pro nukes or jester nukes and dropping queen cells and making splits to sell some nice nukes.
Yep.
That's where this conversation goes for
That's
next year, doesn't it?
that's where it's going for sure. Maybe even a little bit later this year if I get my numbers where they need to be and they're close. Maybe I can sell a few nukes then. But I'm gonna try to graft and see if I come up with some nice little queens and just see what happens. And that's kind of my goal is that's this year kind of dial everything in. And then maybe next year Dukes will be a big part of a significant part of my operation, hopefully. But we'll see. You just never know what the future holds.
Were you able to, did you stop by the Apis engineering booth at Nabi and secure a American grafting tool?
I did not. I'm not even sure what that is.
Oh, come on.
I'm not even sure what that is, Greg. What's an American grafting tool?
Guys, come on now. If you're listening to this video right now and you were at the Bee Expo, let me know in the comments below. Did you stop by the Apis engineering booth and get a free American grafting tool to trial? What I love, and I'm getting fired up. It's the time of year, but if we are truly going to make America great again, we've got to make Made in America great again, hands down, period. And one of the outfits in this country that is doing a great job of that is Dale McMahon at Apis Engineering. He's put his money where his mouth is. Not only is he a veteran, but he manufactures in the USA the finest artificial insemination equipment on the market and does it right here in the USA. Well, we've all gotten tired of saying, "Oh, what's our favorite grafting tool?" Like, it's kind of painful to say, "Oh, the Chinese grafting tool," right? And I got to buy 12 of these things to find one that actually works right. Like, not only does that sound silly and ridiculous, it is silly and ridiculous. So Dale has actually put together an American grafting tool that has replaceable parts, so it's one and done. Like, that is super huge. Bruce, I'm going to try to get you one of those. I've got one. I've got a lot of Apis engineering equipment at our place. It is top notch, very well engineered, very well built, and it's done so by just red, white, and blue American, a military veteran. It just can't get any better than that. But Bruce, we're going to have to get you one of those because what Dale did is it was for like the first, I can't remember how 50 or 75 folks, and there was a line to Timbuktu when they launched that. So there's going to be a lot of feedback coming out on that, but really neat tool. But Bruce, it sounds like it's going to be about time. I wish there were more hours in the day and there was more days in the week. I'd love to cruise down and spend 4 or 5 days with you, all the way through from cell starters to grafting and what to do next. And it's an important thing that you're at that stage where you can't keep buying queens. You've got to get some good genetics in your yard that are proven out, and then you start turning those genetics into more genetic and start
Yeah.
refining that entire thing. Start putting a program together that works for your timeline. You know,
It's
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 about time, Bruce.
it's going to be a work in progress, but I do want to start turning these queens that I really like around and letting them mate with the queens that I like, and and I want to try and get them just kind of generating my own thing a little bit. I still will probably buy queens in the future. I've got probably some more coming in the future, but I would like to start trying to kind of hone that in a little bit and see what happens. I do have a colony, believe it or not. I've got a colony up at the cell tower in Newton, and I'm actually working on a video right now. I went through it. I just kind of decided to do a different kind of a video this past week, and it's the only video I shot. But I spent, and I'm going to whittle it down, but probably 30 minutes in one colony. It was a double deep up at the cell tower, and those bees are as close to perfect as anything that I've seen. They're
Nice.
calm. It's a double deep that's full of all the right things. They're calm. They're nice. Just a beautiful colony of bees, and I'm going to try to. I think that's going to be my queen. I'm going to try to graft from first. I don't remember if the queen came from Zach or not, but they're just really really nice bees, and that bee yard has not been as strong overall as some of the others, but that particular colony is one of the best I've got in my entire operation, and so. In that particular location may not be quite as good as Appleton Farms or Slocum, but those bees have really thrived right there. And so there have been some other hives that have thrived there, but they've been a little bit on the spicy side, if you know what I mean. And so,
No, I don't know what you mean. What are you talking about, Bruce?
but
Never
that
heard
particular
of that.
one, it really, I went through it very carefully, very slowly. I'm going to show it on the video. And I think there were actually some queen cups on the bottom, maybe a little bit. So they're right there. I actually gave them some more space in the video. I'll show you how I did that. But it's kind of like how to read a frame, how to read a hive type of video I'm going to do, just really slowly, carefully. Not, most of my videos I go through several colonies and kind of talk about my whole the grand, like the comprehensive look of things. But on this one, I'm like, look, let's just go through this one hive right here. The bees in this hive, let's look at them. Let's talk about how to look at a frame, what to look for. And I really tried to. I'm trying to do some sort of an education type thing with it. I'm not sure if I do or not, but that I think I'm going to use her to graft off of if I try to do that this weekend and see what happens. Assuming they haven't swarmed, which I don't think they have because I gave them some space, hopefully. But yeah, but it's an ideal colony. I've got several like that, but that one right there, I just for some reason it's the one I'm going to try. But I do want to, and then I'm going to set if I get some cells out of it, I'm going to try to set the splits or the mating nukes close to Appleton Farms there, so they can mate. Hopefully, get some mating off of those bees there. Those are overall the best attitude bees I have as a whole. There's still some there that aren't perfect, but overall they're the best. And then we'll see what we end up with and go from there. But that's
Awesome.
what I'm hoping for. That's my vision. We'll see if it comes together.
All right.
Lots of times it does, lots of times it doesn't. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. Well, this week you said you're at would you say a 6 or a 7 on the 0 to 10 dial it in scale? So we'll check in with you next week, and maybe hopefully we're at like a 7 to an 8.
Yeah, I never know. I never feel like I'm quite where I need to be, but I probably need to start stacking some supers on some of these too to give them some more space as well. And I may just drag some supers along with me as I go out this weekend and just start throwing them on there to give them some space. I can't see it.
Okay, me either. But John Turpin is live responding right now, so we'll give you some feedback from the horse's mouth, as they say, about the yellow jasmine and what to do next. Folks, thanks again for spending time with us tonight talking about bees. If you've got questions, leave them in all caps, and we're going to try to catalog those and go through those tonight. I want to quickly give a shout out to we've got Randy Seller, the Tar Heel beekeeper, is on. Tom and Melissa at Via Honeybees. We've got Mac Apiary Bees. Tom is on. Hale Hives. Matt at Sandy Valley Honey Company, not Matt and Sandy. Ask me how I know. Right, Matt? Okay. Russell Amon's on. Mr. Clay Bunner. Nice to see you in here tonight. Miss Hope Sadler, Highland Honey. The one and only Keith Spielman, Half Tracks and Honeybees. Make sure to check out his YouTube channel. Bruce, thanks for the super chat tonight. Really appreciate you. We've got John Lawler, CD Cook 77, Ian Casper, our pal Wildwoods Honeybee Farms. Grayson is on tonight. Peter Morris, Rex Johnson, Mr. Tony West Bees. Good to see you, and so many more. It's always great to see all the regulars tuning in. We really appreciate you guys spending time with us.
Greg, one thing I'd like to just kind of bring up is I've noticed a lot of folks, even in the comments here, have had a significant amount of loss this year. I know
Yeah.
Tony's had some loss. Joshua Scott, Bees in the Weeds, he did a video on this. And of course, Brian's been doing videos. A lot of people have been doing videos on, man, I've had these losses. And, but then what I love to see is the resilience of these people. Every one of them is just like, I'm determined. We're going to come back from this thing. And a lot of people are starting to put out videos on what their plans are to move forward to get back on track. And so I think that's really neat to see the tenacity of beekeepers, honestly, and those that have had a real hard time, the things they've learned, the things they're doing to improve, and what they're going to do, how they're going to rebuild their operation. I thought that was pretty cool I've been seeing several folks doing that. I'm sure some of the videos I saw, in the last, a few weeks ago, even 4-6 a month or two ago, or whenever it was, is, oh my gosh, it's just been so difficult and I can't believe it. What am I going to do? And never I'm going to quit, but a lot of discouragement, which is very easy to get to that point. And then I've been seeing them, just recently, there's been a renewed strength that I've really enjoyed seeing people just like, okay, this is what happened. This is what we're going to do to fix it. And this is how we're going to overcome this. And we will prevail type of a thing. And I love that attitude. And it's been pretty neat to see. So it's pretty cool. Just the last couple of days, I saw a video from Tony. I saw a video from Joshua Scott there in Kentucky, and I can't name all the people, but it was really pretty neat to see that.
Yeah, and I think how something sounds in my head sounds different than what it's going to sound like when it comes out of my mouth. So don't take this the wrong way, but there is I don't want to say a comfort, but when you see folks who are squared away, who are having troubles with their bees, um, I don't want to say it's comforting for everyone else who has also lost bees, but it reassures you that, hey, there's something going on that's affecting everybody, right? There has been plenty of years where I totally screwed up, where I totally made the wrong call, where I totally had no idea what was going on. I was totally suffering from the Dunning-Kruger curve, and I think a lot of us, if we're honest, would say the same thing. And so when you experience loss, you automatically go back to okay, what did I do this time? Like that's a lot of the beekeepers thing is like, okay, well, what did I? But when you have folks from coast to coast who are coming out from all different scales and methods and genetics and everything, and they're having trouble, that's a horrible thing. But the silver lining is you're not alone. You're not the only one who's suffering through this and trying to figure it out. And the silver lining is you're not the only one suffering through and trying to figure this out, because we're going to find a solution. We're going to find something. We're going to find some way to work through, to pull through, and to make it happen, to get past all this, right? And then that's going to be feedback that we have. And look, I don't want to be the harbinger or the doom and gloom guy, but here's a little news flash. It's going to happen again. So whatever we can do now in our picture, in our time frame of beekeeping, to figure out, not even figuring out necessarily what the problem was, but how do we work through this? How do we rebound? How do we regroup? How do we get back on our feet? That's the most important thing, because no matter what is thrown at us in the future, we always have this, and nothing can take this away from us on what we do next, how we work together, how do we get back on our feet. And that's important with anything in life, but beekeeping specifically, because if it's not this, there's a potential to be something else. This is farming. This is bee farming, right? And so there's a great comfort in knowing that there is an entire community of folks who are going through this and trying to figure this out. And the comfort is, when there's this many folks suffering through, there's even more opportunities for folks to figure out a solid path forward. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And that's, I think, what you were speaking to, Bruce. I've got a couple more videos that I'll put out on folks speaking out about what's going on. And it's not so much a clickbait, the bees are dying, oh my gosh, newsflash. It's more so like, this is gut reactions from beekeepers on what they think is going on. And that's important as we start to put the puzzle pieces together. I've got one interview specifically, and this rascal is fired up. I mean, fired up. And this gentleman has every right to do so, and has a lot of truth bombs to throw on this thing. So I'm looking forward to get those out too. And I'm also looking forward to getting some other videos out too. We just released one with the Summers family. Totally cool. They're going full time. They're in it as a family. And that is, I love that. But
Yeah.
anyways, so
Well,
Bruce, thanks again for the super chat. And Mike's bees rebound, hashtag let's go.
that's right. Yeah, I'm seeing comments as we're talking, scrolling through. A lot of people, are talking about how bad it hurts and how they're going to get regroup and all these things. And I think these chats like this are really good to, like 15, 20 years ago, before YouTube was a thing, before this was a thing, how do people deal with it? Who do they talk to? You know what I mean? It's kind of like almost like a therapy session, honestly. Number one, you can come in here and commiserate. We can all talk about it together.
Misery loves company. Yeah.
Yeah. And we can all just kind of, but then again, we can also come up with solutions and try different things. And as we discuss it together, whether it be us talking about it on the chat or just what's going on in the comments section over here. And so there's just so much, I think we have such an ability to be able to attack things maybe faster and hopefully more effectively with all the opportunities that are out there now and all the, even research from previous events that have happened. And so many of the big time beekeepers getting involved, and so many people are out there doing research and trying to figure it out, that maybe, just maybe, we can get through this thing hopefully a little more effectively or efficiently than maybe last time. We'll see. I don't know. But I know people are determined and people are working at it, and it's going to be neat to see the rebound from that. So anyway,
all right.
We're already 37 minutes in. Greg, believe it or not.
Can you believe that? I'm just getting fired up. Okay, so let me read this real quick and make sure John says this is okay to share publicly. Let's see. Okay, he says, whatever you do, do not let this be publicly known. Okay, so let's go ahead and read it. It said, I'm just kidding. He didn't say that. He says, we're flamethrowers tonight. He says he's hasn't got the field data yet, but let's see. They did see in some lab studies. See, John's so smart. We just have John on to talk about this. It looks like it's mainly the pollen. Mainly the pollen causing the issue, based on what he sees in the field. They're waiting on lab results. So possibly you could put on a pollen trap. That's actually pretty interesting. That's not a bad idea. Or a way to knock the pollen off. So what he's saying, if I'm reading this text correctly, the problem that he's seeing is with the pollen more so than nectar. So if that's the case, you want to prevent the pollen from being stored in the frame. So maybe the only economical pollen trap that I know that you could put on if you had it is if, like, on our premium hive kits, we've got the Apame top and feeder on our wax dip boxes, and then the bottom has the Apame bottom. It already has the pollen trap built in. That would actually be a super big winner on knocking back pollen. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know if there's really cost-effective, affordable options to put pollen traps on a bunch of colonies if you've got more than 6 or 7 colonies. But I'll get with John and see if he's got some other ideas there. So John, if you're listening to this, thanks for letting me put you on the spot. I want to thank Pat from Freedom Apiaries, red, white, and blue. What a great apiary name. Super excited. It's beekeeping season again. Definitely make some videos of the cloak board, Bruce. Very interested in those.
I plan on doing that, but I'm debating about this first time, just trying it, just trying to figure it out.
Get a grip on it first before.
Yeah,
I just don't know. Do you see videos from somebody who they've never even used the thing?
I do that. I do that a lot, and then I end up, like, people try to do what I did. Yeah, people try to do what I did sometimes, and I've learned. Sometimes I'll still do that, but with a brand new something like this, I want to try. I just think I want to try it first. I want to get to where what I do makes sense and it actually works. And I still am a little bit nervous about grafting. I've done it. I did it twice last year. The first time was during the ultimate perfect time in the spring, and it worked out well. I tried again in like July or August, and I couldn't see very well when I was grafting, and I was like 3 for 30, and they weren't even very good sales. And so, but it was in the worst time of the year too. It was awful. The bees were feisty and mean, and just it wasn't a good time to do it. I don't think anybody has good success that time of the year down here. So But my springtime, and I'm going to try it, but I'm going to see what happens. But I will. My plans are to definitely do that. Just not sure if I'm going to do it the very first time or not. We'll see. That's my plan anyway. We'll see what happens.
That's the plan. Plan your work your plan. Here we go.
So you heard it. You heard it here. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Bruce, I've got some. We'll talk about that later. I've got some cool cloak boards that we're building. Maybe I'll have to send you one of those. We've got a question here from Mr. Andy Moore. Thanks for the question. And remember, if you've got questions, please put them in all caps so we can actually see them and get to them. Andy has a question. What is your goal for colony strength for honey production? I live in South Central Indiana. The maple trees are blooming, and I have been open feeding. I'm trying to bolster the colonies. Bruce, colony strength for honey production. What do you typically see in your neck of the woods as far as configuration and size that's a good production configuration?
That is such a good question, and people will debate about this. I've kind of come to the conclusion. I've run most of my colonies in the past have been either deep and mediums or double deeps for honey production. What tends to happen when you do that is that you'll end up with, like for example, say we got a double deep. Right now, these colonies are busting the seams. They'll have brood in both the bottom and the top. They'll have I don't have any super stacked up yet now. So what I'm seeing is, in the middle part of the bottom box, you have like 4 or 5 frame, maybe even 6 frames of brood. Top, you might have 3 or 4 frames of brood. And then you kind of have this dome from the side to the top and from the front to the back, a dome like this, and then that dome. But it's just packed in with bees, and she's putting it brood wherever she can. They're trying to pack everything in there. That's when they snap into swarm mode. When you start to put the queen excluder on and then stack the supers up, they'll start moving up into the supers, obviously putting honey in there. And I usually let them work up into a super first, and then put a queen, and then shake all the bees out, put a queen excluder in after they've started working it, and then they just go right up through without any trouble. But what tends to happen when our flow really hits hard here is they will fill the supers and begin to backfill down into the second deep or the medium, whatever's that second box. And so what tends to happen is almost when I go to take the honey off, I'll remove that queen excluder sometimes, and there's like another box below that's almost full of honey. You know what I mean? It can have a little bit of brood and kind of mixed in. But that is the easiest way I've found to do it in my case, either deep and medium or double deep, simply because I don't have the time to really manage a single brood box. I think if you're not careful with a single brood box, they can pack it out. You just can get in trouble with that, especially if you're trying to do that over winter. Because there's so many bees packed in that one box. So you put the queen excluder in, you can stack the supers on, but you just got to watch them, because if they backfill it with honey, if you don't have enough supers, it can become a problem. I like to almost have that box in the middle as a buffer. They can they grow up into, or they can build just kind of a buffer area for them to kind of do what they want to do in that second box. That's worked well for me. If I have colonies that are like these new splits I made this year, they may just run single brood through the honey season, because they haven't built up into a big double deep yet, and I'm going to start stacking honey supers on here in the next few weeks, and so that's the best way to maximize honey production off of those. And so I guess the question was, what's the best configuration? I don't know, man. I would love to try single brood chamber, but I can't do it. I honestly just about cannot do that with my time limitations and stay on top of it without having them either in the trees or just having problems. And so I prefer the ideal hive size here in the South with the bees that I normally run is either a deep and a medium 10 frame or a double deep 8 frame, which I don't have any 8 framers, but that to me is like the perfect size box for a brood chamber here in the South. It's very aggravating when you have a deep in a meeting or trying to do splits and stuff. It's hard because, you don't have interchangeable frames. And so it becomes difficult that way. It becomes tricky. So that's kind of where I'm at as far as that goes. I prefer the deep and medium or double deep. Double deep is really kind of my preferred management, but I kind of do a little bit of everything.
I think we all try to fool around a little bit and see which makes the most amount of sense, and you finally land on something, and you kind of do try to recreate that. I think when we talk about single brood, I love the idea of single brood. It's obviously proven and it works, but I don't think a lot of folks understand the intent of single brood, the way that I kind of look at a lot of these things, and maybe this is just how my goofy brain thinks, but I think of bees like chickens or cows, and you get into stocking rate and stocking density. When you look at these units, these boxes, you take double deep boxes, right? And you've got a certain stocking density where you have X amount of bees are all living in this two box space. And you talk about stocking rate is uh, how long do the two boxes full of space with these bees, how long can that go with those bees in there? So with how I have used single brood is you take that stocking density in two boxes and you shake them all out into one box, and you have a much tighter stocking rate of time that all these bees are in this box because you're wanting all this field force to do an enormous amount of work in a short amount of time. And that's where your honey supers on top of that one single box come into play. That works, but the intent of that is when you are in a neck of the woods where you have a very tight window of flow and you need bees to capture all this flow in a very, very tight window, then that approach I think makes a lot of sense. Where some folks get confused with single brood management is they think they're only going to raise this entire colony of bees in one box the entire year, and that quickly gets out of hand, or the colony doesn't mature and get to a big enough size where there's a heavy enough of a density to create enough of a field force to actually go out and do anything. Can you make honey on 5 frame boxes? Well, sure. Is it going to be as much as is 5/5 going to make as much honey as double deeps? No, there's no way. It's a numbers game. There's just no way. Is it going to create honey? Is that good for you? That's up to you to decide. But I'm with you, Bruce. When it comes to actually making honey, I like double deeps, and I like to get them in the double deeps when they're kind of happy, and this queen will just brood in this double deep space. Now, sometimes we give them that first super above all that, where they kind of choose what they're going to want to do. Sometimes it might be a little brood for a short window and then all honey. Sometimes it's just all honey. But if I can, like you mentioned, I like to let them get up into that first super. If it's not drawn comb, have them kind of draw that out, start to do some of that work, shake everybody back down, and then let them come back up through and just go to town. And then you're just stacking boxes up. I really like to do that when at all possible. And then the same thing with the story and a half, give them the story and a half for brood and then start stacking supers on kind of above that. Every
Yeah.
year is different based on how heavy the flow is, how long you are expecting that flow to go. But I think we could
Yeah.
start talking about, maybe we could get Ian Stepler on sometime. He's more in tune. Or who would be really good at this conversation is the one and only Mr. J.W. Irwin. Has quite the extensive cattle history. I know he could teach us more than a thing or two about stocking rate and stocking density and how that could possibly translate to bees and how we could use that information to better understand the number of bees in the boxes, the work that they can do, and how long we can get them to do that work inside of the box before we've got a problem. You put too many cows
Yeah.
on a small pasture, for too long, you got major problems. But you put a large herd on a small pasture for 3 or 4 hours, and then you move them on to the next one. That is tremendous.
Yeah. The key, I think, with honey production is to have the maximum population ready to go out and forage at the time the honey flow starts. And that's
Yeah.
the timing is so important. And so I know people use the Demarest method. Like they pull they keep the queen below, they pull the brood above a couple supers, and all that brood will emerge and then they pack honey in there because there's so much of a population right when the honey flow hits, and that prevents swarming as well. And people also will condense. I think Ian kind of does this. He condenses down in that single deep when there's a huge population right when the honey flow hits, and then they just maximize, and he stacks those colonies way high on a single brood box, because they've maximized it. But to do that, it's just so labor intensive, in my opinion. It's just when you're trying to build them up and then decrease them down and pack all the bees into a box or do splits here. It's just so hard to do that. And I understand the principle if you're trying to maximize honey. A huge field force uh, is the best way to make a lot of honey. You know, you can have a nuke that's packed out with bees of 5 framers, and then you have a 10 frame deep that's packed out, or double deeps is totally packed out with bees, and that double deep field force is going to be so much larger. It's going to make,
Yeah.
it's not just going to make like 4 times the amount of honey as a 5 frame nuke. It's going to make way more than that. You know, it's because there's so much more ability of those bees to go out and get it. They get way more work done, and it's all about strength in numbers. And so I understand the principle behind all of it. I also understand the principle behind single brood management, and the fact that it's easier because all your broods down below, and then they kind of and they'll fill that box up down below. But man, it's just if you're not careful, they'll get
Get
into
away from
swarming.
me.
And but the other thing too is what I've noticed with my bees, and tell me if you kind of agree with this, is that normally like right now in the spring is when the danger of swarming is. And I know for you guys it's later in the season, but it seems to me like when the honey flow really kicks in, the bees kind of move past that swarming unless they're really crowded. If they're super crowded, they still may swarm. But if they have space to expand, you know, when the honey flow kicks in, they not sure what happened there. If I just bump my mic for some reason, it mutes on me. I'm not sure. Maybe there's a little spot I'm hitting that I don't realize it.
I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens.
If the honey flow kicks in, it seems like they focus on the honey. Then they really focus on doing that. They don't focus as much on swarming. It seems like that kind of dies down a little bit, that swarming impulse, once the honey flow kicks in or the nectar flow kicks in. And so that's just how I feel about it. I mean, my bees, I'm sure I'll have some that swarm this year. I do every year, but I'm trying to stay ahead of them. But those are just a few thoughts I have. I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out. I've made a lot of honey over the years. I may have been able to maximize it a little better, but just my time limitations, it's hard to really get down and just manage every box and try to watch everything close enough to do the smaller hive management. I gotta give them plenty of space to be able to work and move, and hopefully have a little bit of forgiveness as far as that goes. And I like, once again, to have that little buffer area. And
Yeah,
sure,
absolutely.
the honey does kick in because, man, right here when that tallow flow hits, they will fill 3 or 4 boxes up almost overnight, and then they start backfilling. If you're not careful, they'll go honey bound, and the bottom box will be full of honey. And there's no place for the queen to lay, and then you get in trouble too. And so it's just a it's just there's an art to it, like you say, Greg. I mean, we had that video with Bob Benny. There is an art to it, and
Hmm.
then you throw in, you know, in my case, I'm trying to get better at this, but you have different genetics involved, where some bees store more honey than others, and then you got some that may have more of a tendency to be honey bound, some that may not, and some may be stronger than others, and so there really is an art to it, and I think that's what we're all trying to figure out. Maybe some of the big time commercial guys have it figured out, but I still don't. So that's just kind of my theory in 2025. We'll see if it changes by 2026.
All right, we'll keep asking you. What's the dialed in scale? Zero
What
to
do you
10.
think? What do you think,
Where are
Greg?
you at?
What do you think?
I tell you, I mean, your spot. I mean, you're 100% right because your thoughts are based on your experience, and I think that the right answer to that's going to depend on anybody what their subset of experiences is. You try to make honey over when on, and I have on 5/5s, and it's you can achieve the same. The concept proves because you've got a 5 framer in the bottom that's brood. You put the next 5 framer up, and there's they start to go brood. Then you put a medium on top, and it quickly becomes a little bit of brood, and then the super, and then you can go up. And the concept proves, but the question becomes, how do we maximize this? How do we get the most out of this unit? And I think what you mentioned there, getting the brood and the field force balanced, and give them enough room to continue to work, yet to store the crop. That is the sweet spot that we've got to find. If you don't give them enough room to manage the brood and they backfill with the crop, now all of a sudden you may have a honey crop in there. It's jammed in there around all the brood, which is a nightmare for extraction. But now the queen gets honey bound. She's got no place to go. Now what do you do? Now you let that go too long, or if you're only in your colonies every 10 to 14 days, in 14 days, now all of a sudden the brood chamber is completely jammed out with honey. And by the time that you get that straightened around, you're going to have a lapse in field force in the next month where if you still have a flower coming on, now all of a sudden you've got a colony that is now backfeed and eating themselves out of that scenario and are too weak to do anything. Now they're just rebuilding and getting ready for winter. So it's like there are a few things that you've got to do in the right timeline to make sure that you've got a mature field force, you have a queen who's got room to lay, and that you have a bees that are just ready to go for storing honey. And that is tricky. A couple things go wrong and you're upside down. So I'm with you.
Yeah.
Double deeps are a story and a half, but you got to be balanced with field force and young brood cycling through all this with a queen who's got room to lay. If you don't do that, all you can do is you're just rolling the dice.
Y'all have some this year, probably, I'm sure, in just single deeps, some of these new splits. And so we'll see how it goes. Tim Greer has a comment there. He says, male disticones, my glasses, I need new glasses or something. OTS book explains the best way to maximize honey. That's OTS. That's a method of splitting, on the spot splitting, I think is what it stands for. And, I've heard so many different people say they have the best way to maximize honey production. And, there are so many ways to do it. And I think it really is a matter of opinion. And I haven't read that particular method. I know Desmarais, they claim to have the best way to maximize honey production. But I think it's just a matter of trying the different techniques, learning about the different techniques, and then trying to see what works best for you in your area. And frankly, I do think I probably give up a little bit of productivity or a little bit of efficiency with my honey production. I probably could produce a little bit more, but with me, it's just a matter of having the time to be able to manage everything properly and take care of the bees. And I would rather them make a little bit less honey for me and have them not get honey bound and die out on me, and make sure they have enough room to survive and take care of them, than to maximize honey production and then have my bees die. And that's the battle I fight every year in July and August, is what could I have done differently? When I start pulling the honey off is when I start really assessing the colonies again, like in late June usually. And I always have some that are just in poor shape. Sometimes I think they've tried to supersede their queen. Sometimes they've gotten honey bound, and sometimes they have mite issues. And so, but really, once I start stacking honey supers on, I don't go down in the breed nest very often unless I detect a problem, that I can tell is really visible. It's just hard. You can't unstack 4 or 5 honey boxes off a hive. Every time you go through 100 and something colonies, it's just not feasible. And so,
well, and you also have to look at some point you get into understanding that each colony or hive of bees is a unit and an asset. And at the moment, if you've got 4 or 5 honey boxes on there, I would be more concerned with capturing the honey than I would be for checking for a swarm cell. Because even if they do decide to swarm and hit the trees, and they leave a replacement queen in the box, I'm pulling off 4 or 5 boxes of honey. If they're mediums, and that's 30 pounds per box, 30 pounds times 5, 150 pounds of honey times, a net profit of, let's say, by the time you buy your bottle and a label, and it's $1,500, right? Yeah. So if one swarm of bees leaves out, right, and you got this brood break, and now they're on cruise control for the rest of the winter, you check back, drop a queen cell or mate, like, it's okay, like that, no brainer. But we're not taking off 5 frames. We're not taking off 4 boxes of honey to check and make sure the queen has room to lay at that point. We're trying to be methodical with what we do. Stack up the honey supers, pull them off, do treatments, then do follow-up splits, check up for queen vitality, health, and performance, requeen, another round of treatment, and then start to build up and cruise for the wintertime. That's how I think about those things. I like what Glade Sessions, shout out to Mr. Glade Sessions, the Utah bee man. Great point here. A lot of folks maybe they've seen it, maybe they haven't. But one hive with 60,000 bees will make way more honey than 2 hives with 30,000 each. And I like that. And I've seen that same exact thing. You can have one colony that is just booming, and they're just jacked up and ready to go, and they are just producing a ton of honey because something happens. There's somebody way smarter than me, which is just about everybody. There's probably a formula here where a 1 + 1 = 3. There's a word that I love, a term that I love in farming. I think it's actually a military term, but force multipliers. Something happens inside of a colony when they get to a certain size where there are force multipliers within these larger colonies that happen and occur that don't happen inside of smaller colonies. What that is exactly, I don't know, but I think it's having the constant refreshing and resurging of mature forage bees that are constantly doing so much more work when a colony gets to a larger size versus two colonies that they may be in that same cycle, but they're not developing the ratio of forage bees as these larger colonies are. They just, whatever that it is, they just get more done. They're getting after it in a way that the two colonies with the same amount of numbers just can't do. So while there is strength in numbers, there is strength in numbers in individual colonies that I see. Bruce, do you think you see the same thing? One booming hive creates more honey than two
Oh yeah.
hives of this. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Hey, Zach has a great comment right there, man. If you could pull it up.
I need to. How come you can't pull up the question? How come you can't?
Because Brian's in your back office and I'm not.
What in the world? We're gonna have to give you a promotion, Bruce. I can't do all this at once. Let's see.
I think you can only have one person be at the level that can do that. But Zach has a great comment.
We're gonna have to make some phone calls. Bruce, we're gonna run this thing up the flagpole. I'm gonna call Susie into the office tomorrow, and I'm gonna say, I don't know what we need to do, but we need to give Bruce a promotion. Let me see. Gosh, Bruce, I don't even know where the comment is.
It's near the end.
Give me a timestamp. Give me a timestamp.
It just it's like a minute ago. It just barely happened. It's right near the bottom.
What time is it? 9:05. Okay. Said it was Zach.
Yeah, Zach Heinzelman. It's only about 6 or 7.
9:04.
Maybe. Yeah. That's it.
9:04. Take care of the bees.
Yep.
Look at this fine oiled machine. Zach Heinzelman. By the way, Zach, I think I saw on social media that a lady finally made an honest man out of you. Is that true? Did I see that? Did somebody finally tie this guy down? If so, congratulations. Zach says, take care of the bees and they will take care of you. The rest is a variable. Coming from a guy who raises bees in Hawaii, I mean, gosh, I'm not jealous or anything, but it's a good comment, though. You take care of the bees. I mean, they're a workforce. They're a unit. They're an investment. They're an asset. How do we tune that thing up to where it's performing at its highest possible level? Look at this. Hey, if Grayson says it, we've got to do it. That's just a fact, Jack. Oh, man, look at all this. Bruce, what is going on here? Look at this. Bruce, everyone. All right. I don't know how to do it.
It depends on if StreamYard will let us do it. That's the problem. I think you have a limited number of people that can be managers or whatever in your back office.
Well, I love all these people, and they're absolutely are all great. But when this one particular person says to do something, the one, the only, Dr. David Bueno Martin says, #promote Bruce. He said it. We're going to do it. All right. We got a lot of really great questions in here, Bruce.
Yeah,
we got a lot of great questions tonight. Everything from reversing boxes to queen carnage, virgins versus mated, reversing deeps. What happened to Big Red? The whole nine. There's a bunch going on right after this little 90-second break from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Greg Burns, founder of Nature's Image Farm and EnduraHive wax-dipped equipment. Hey, as large family beekeepers, we saw a major need to do way better in protecting our investment with our beekeeping equipment from the elements for the long haul. So I coupled our practical beekeeping experience with our wood science background to create the EnduraHive wax-dipped line of beekeeping equipment. Our unique wax dip process expels water from the wood, replaces and impregnates it with our proprietary blend of microcrystalline wax, offering superior weather protection without the mess or expense of paint. Our equipment is protected from the weather inside and out, preventing box rot, fungal growth, and decomposition. That's a huge savings in both time and money. No more reworking tired, worn out boxes year after year. Our wax-dipped equipment is proudly made in the USA. So protect your investment with EnduraHive wax-dipped equipment. No paint, no rot, no hassle. EnduraHive, built to endure.
All right, Bruce, here we go. Question from Spencer Cox. What would happen if you installed a new queen into a colony and a virgin queen hatched out and was out on her mating flight? When she returned, would she kill the new queen or would she be killed? That's a
Yeah.
great question. So you're in a scenario, you got a colony, you just installed a new queen. She's probably in a cage, candy, fresh, the whole nine, right? And at the same time, there was this rogue wild cell inside the colony. Virgin hatches, and in that same time frame, the virgin goes out on a flight. When she gets back, the question is, would the virgin kill the new queen or would she be killed? Bruce, what do you think?
I think it's survival of the fittest, man. Whoever's toughest. I don't know. I would tend to think the virgin would win the battle. And here's the reason why. I might be wrong.
Let's hear it, Bruce.
So, first of all, I guess if she gets back, she's just been mated, so she's not really a virgin anymore. But she's not fully mature as a queen, as a mated queen yet. It takes a little time to start laying, if I'm not mistaken, right, Greg? You're the queen guy. But I think also if they had already created that cell in there and you missed it when you put the cage in there and she emerged, or whatever, if the bees had made that queen on their own, my guess is they might have more of a tendency to be loyal to the queen that they created or the virgin queen that's out on the flight. And I'm not sure if they would ever actually have a duel or if the other bees would kill that new queen as she emerged from the cage. That's my thought. If she happened to fly back in and the queen, like if, for example, if you just released the queen in there, not in a cage, for example, and the virgin happened to come back from a flight and she was already in there roaming around, I don't know what would happen, but that is my guess. I know that brand new virgins don't have the strong pheromone, and I've heard they're pretty good assassins. They're pretty tough. They're pretty good at what they do. They can take out an older queen sometimes pretty easily. And but I don't know if she just got mated. I'm not sure how tough she would be to be able to fight if she came back, loaded up and trying to develop sexually like that. But if it comes to just a one-on-one duel between the two, I'm not sure who would win, how that would work out. What do you think, Greg? You may have seen this before. You may have seen this in your operation before. I don't know.
Well, I think this happens. It actually happens way more often than you would think. And you go in there and you go to look for this. Maybe it's a mated queen in a queen cage, and you go in there and you're thinking, I know that was a black queen. How did this blonde girl get in here? What in the world? And where did her mark go? I think it happens probably more often than you think. But here's what I'm thinking. So if I'm running that scenario, if I'm placing the queen inside of it, let's say I went in the day before, or I went in right then and there, and I'm going through the box and I don't see a queen cell. It's covered up in bees. I don't see it. Okay, I thought everything was squared away. Or I went in yesterday, or maybe I'm not even looking. I'm just putting the mated queen in there. Put the mated queen in. Like typically, sometimes I look and see how the bees are reacting before I commit. But if you just put the queen in, if the virgin had already hatched, I think that the bees would kill the queen in the cage. Because they've already committed to this virgin, right? She's already hatched out of the cell, right? She's probably turned around and went back in and fed on the rest of the world jelly. And she's back out again, and they're looking at her, maybe feeding her a little bit, cleaning her up a little bit. They're going back and forth, and she's not going to hatch and then go on a mating flight as soon as she hatches. That doesn't happen, right? At least I don't believe that to happen. I've never seen that. What does happen is if the cell already hatched and you've got a virgin running around and she's going on a mating flight in that time frame that you're putting the mated queen in, I think they'll nuke the mated queen hands down. No question. So, the only thing that I think this would get squirrely is if before the queen cell hatches, if you put a mated queen in, they're still committed to that cell. But if that queen cell is not, if it's 4 days away from hatching or 5 days, like if they just capped it and they've got 7 days to go or 6 days to go before it actually hatches, I think there may be enough time in that window where either they're still going to probably murder the queen in the cage, but if they don't and they let that queen go on and live a little bit longer, they may actually like revert and start to accept the mated queen if, and not kill her if she's in a California or she's in a 3-hole Denton with screen. If that queen is in a regular JZ-BZ cage, they can get in there and cause some damage for sure. They can chew up the tarsal pads. They can wear her out in a way to where even if she does get out, she's not going to be worth anything. So I think it's a great question, but just recognize and remember that as soon as they hatch, they don't go out on a mating flight immediately. So if she's out on a mating flight and comes back, they're going to murder the queen. If it's a cell that's going to hatch tomorrow, they're still probably going to murder that mated queen. But if it's a longer time frame where she's got some days before she hatches, they're still committed to keeping that cell warm. But maybe in that time frame, they could jump ship, switch queens.
Trying to show you, I got a really good example of this. I want to show you, Greg, exactly what we're talking about. Can you share that screen right there?
We gotta get you full rights here. Okay, let's see. Add to stage. Boom. There it
All
is.
right. Okay, look right
There you
here.
go.
Okay, I don't know how well you can see this. Can you see my?
How can we make that like the whole screen? Oh, that's not it.
I don't
We'll
know.
get that guy
I don't know
off
how
there.
we-
Oh, geez, not that guy. Where's Brian at where we need him? He's sitting on a beach, drinking virgin pina coladas, I'm sure, just enjoying himself. Where'd it go, Bruce? We are nothing without Brian. Where is he at? There.
There we
Okay.
go.
Let's
Maybe
let's
it's
go
good
with that
enough.
for now. Let's go.
All
with
right.
that.
So if you look over here on the, what I would call, if you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, I don't know if you can see my cursor right there, but that is a cell. It looks like a queen has emerged from that cell, right? Like, and then you look over here, you got, I think there's 5 or 6 more cells. One there, one there, one there, and there, and there. Like 5 or 6 more cells right here that have been torn in from the side. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Hopefully you can. This is very interesting. This particular colony is a colony that I had put a mated queen in. Obviously, I missed this frame. I didn't see this frame. This is one of my new mated queens. This was from a nasty mean hive. I think this was the second round of queens I did. Just
Well, that's one way you would miss it. They're lighting you up and you're putting it back quick.
But here's the interesting thing about this. When I was pulling this hive apart, this was actually, I know why I missed this probably. This was actually a colony that was extremely feisty, and it was like a double deep. And I think I found a queen in here actually, and I think I eliminated her. I pulled a couple splits out of here, and I put the mated queen in here. And when I came back a week later, the mated queen was walking around as happy as she could be, the big old blonde Hawaiian queen. And I came across this frame. I snapped this picture because I put it on a forum called Friendly Beekeepers for Beginners or something like that. And there's like got 200 something thousand people on there. But I actually asked the question, what do you think happened here? And so originally, just looking at this, I would say this queen emerged over here on the left, and she ate through all the cells, the rest of the cells. But for whatever reason, the new queen is just fine. She's in there. She's a big old mated. It'd been a week since I put her in there, and a new queen emerged wouldn't have had a chance to have gotten mated and look as big and strong as she did. I'm pretty sure I killed the original queen that was in here. So my guess is that somebody, I don't know if it was this queen emerged and killed all these, or if the mated queen emerged and killed all these, and then maybe she attacked that one as it emerged, or maybe that was just one she got from the top. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cells right here, at least 7, I think, right here, that got absolutely annihilated by somebody. And so I thought that was interesting, Greg, because you mentioned that. I thought I'd show that up there and see. What do you think about that? Now it's definitely Zach's queen because it's a big old yellow belly mated queen and they're walking around with no problems. And so I don't know what the rest of the story is here, but I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at that, I see them doing a bunch of post-work cleanup stuff.
Mhm.
It looks like I'm seeing a little bit of jelly and maybe a pupae still. The bottom cell to the left where they came in from the side,
Possibly, yeah.
that doesn't look like a hatched bottom. It looks like they came in from the bottom again to chew in and clean up.
Yep.
So
it's pretty interesting though, isn't it?
that, yeah, for whatever reason. I mean, maybe, I don't know. Is it possible did you make a split out of that and remove bees from that colony? Did those get cold and then they're just cleaning it up? Or maybe they went through and they just killed everything that was there except for the one they took?
I think, well,
Nothing
the one
looks
that
hatched there.
the one that ended up being taken was the mated queen. So
Oh, okay. So
the mated
this is
queen.
perfect.
So
Yeah. So case in point. So if you look at all, like if you look at these cells, there is
There's 7.
one,
There's
there's
the one on the
7.
left. There's one right next to it that you can barely see right there. There's one right next to it. The one on the left, one
Mhm.
right next to it. There's 1, 2, then there's 3, 4,
Yeah. So they
5,
went through the side of the
6.
cell and killed. So in this case, they
Yep,
then chose the mated queen over the queen cells. So this
looks
is
that
that
way.
time for, and if you look at the age of those cells, especially the bottoms, you know, they had a little bit of time left before they hatched.
Yep.
So I think
My
they
question is the one on the top left, though. That's the one that looks like she came out from the end. Do you think they could have
I
murdered
don't
that
know
one from the end? That was the one that
maybe.
looked like.
I mean,
It's interesting,
here's
though.
what I would say: judging on the length of all the other cells that are there, you know, I mean, that's a weird opening. Typically, it's
Mhm.
like if you look at the one on the bottom left, that one looks like the closest
Yep.
to probably hatching out. But I
You're
mean,
right. You're right.
it's we're speculating because I don't have it in front of me to look to see. But what's clear is you've got a pattern of them chewing out the sides. So they've gone through and they've nuked
That's
everything that was there.
But that is the ultimate picture. When you say a queen is in the hive and she doesn't
Mhm.
like the cells that are there, that is what they do. When they decide they want to
It's a
take the rest
great
of the queens
photo.
out, that's exactly what they do. So I'm going to keep this in my arsenal to show people. But
It's great.
whether or not it's a mated queen or virgin queen emerged and destroyed the rest of them, that is the damage they can do when they want to be the top dog. That's what it looks like. So anyway, I thought that would be kind of fun to
That is
show.
good. That's neat. So how would you caption that?
I don't know. Crime scene. I don't know.
Pre-emerged virgins murdered in the middle of the night while new queen was accepted, new Hawaiian queen accepted. That's what it looks like to me.
Something like that. Anyway, it's pretty
Good
cool.
picture, Bruce.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that.
I don't know that Zach wants you calling his queens yellow bellies though. Just saying.
Well,
Commie queens. I don't think he don't want that. That's, all right, we got some great questions. It's getting late. Let's cruise through some of these, Bruce. Hail Hives, you saying you're taking the learning yard on the road with Greg Burns. I must have missed the other comments there, but Paul, that would be cool. I think Paul, Louisiana. I think maybe we should do that. Maybe we should try to set something up down south. Come by, we'll see
that'd be a
Bruce.
lot of fun.
Checking on his Queen stuff. Maybe go cruise on down to Louisiana and see a bunch of the guys down there. All right. We got Mr. Smarty Pants himself, my fellow short story longer. It's got to be Tom. I'm not sure which part of tonight that this pertains to, but Tom, I want to let you know that I am highly unoffended and you are 100% correct. Mr. Matt Kirkland, thank you for the $5 super chat tonight. Really appreciate that. We're cruising through the last of the questions here. So if you've got a question, if you want to try to sneak it in, make sure you put it in all caps and we'll try to cruise through it tonight. Quickly shout out the one and only Mr. Mike Art, military veteran, oxalic acid extraordinaire. Him and his son Travis, his whole team are awesome dudes. If you don't know about it, Mike's Easy Ox, the absolute best oxalic acid on the market. And what I love about what these guys do is these are a part. I'm gonna put together a team, Bruce. Look at that. Bruce representing with the Mike's Easy Ox hat. Looking
One
good, Bruce.
one of the coolest
Look at that.
logos in the market, man. It's an awesome logo. I
Coolest
love
logos. I think we're gonna put like
it.
a special team of producers together. And these are a bunch of producers that are literally making made in America great again. Mike and Travis Art, Mike's Easy Ox, they're doing it in a big way. So appreciate you guys. I like that. Making made in America great again. Let's go. Okay, question here from Mr. Randy Southard, the Tar Heel beekeeper. Greg, what's the word on queens at Nature's Image Farm? The word is right now, we are completely sold out of queens for the year, unless you are already grandfathered in, and we will be sending out emails in the next couple weeks. If you are already a previous Nature's Image Farm queen customer, you are going to get first dibs on all availability. We're going to send out emails and get you on the list. But we're blessed with more demand than we have for our genetic line. And so we are not going to be offering those publicly as of right now. We're going to make sure that we take care of all the folks who have been a part of this and part of all this growth. We're going to make sure that you folks are grandfathered in, have first dibs at those queens, both mated queens. We're also going to have some breeder queens available later in the year too. You guys will all have first dibs. If you want to get on the list and you're not a customer, you can totally go to our website, naturesimagefarm.com, click the About Us, and shoot us a message. Hit that contact tab, shoot us a message, and ask that we put you on that queen list. We will add you to that list, and as we go through everything, that's going to be right now the best way to get on the queen list until we get all of our queen dates scheduled, and then we'll kind of see what happens. But Randy, great question. You obviously would be grandfathered in, Randy, so we'll be getting with you and other folks to see what you need this year and how we can help. Great question here from Mr. Grayson. Bees are booming down here, and Bruce, I think he's down in Alabama. Bees are booming down here. Just added another box to a hive. Going to make 5 frame splits from a double deep, 4 out of 1. That's my plan for now. How are you, Bruce and Greg? How are you, Bruce and Greg, going to do splits? Bruce, give us the elevator speech on how Bruce is making splits this year.
You mean, well, very quickly, if I have a 2 frame or if I have a double deep that's just packed out with bees, you can break it down into 4 splits, but I'm a little, I don't really want to do that because I do want to have productivity this year, production out of my hives. And so if you take 20 frames and make 4 splits out of it, 4 or 5 frame nukes, I think you do risk the ability to make some honey that year. Now, not to say you won't, but you won't probably make as much as if you allow that colony to remain strong. And so what I like to do is take maybe 1 or 2 splits out of there and leave enough bees back for it to be hopefully at least a strong single. And then they can build back up pretty quickly into double deep or whatever I want for my production colonies. That's kind of how I like to do it. Not to say I don't ever break them down that hard, but I'm less likely to do that if I'm trying to maintain some colonies for production. I want to make sure they have the strength to be able to make some honey when the time is right. But I'll pull a good strong nuke out of almost any colony and sometimes 2, but rarely do I break it down into 4 out of 2 of double deep.
I like to think of splits as I've ran a lot of them for a long time where I would split the tar out of everything and I would have a bunch of all these little weak, measly splits that were liabilities and not assets. And at first it feels good because here's all these boxes out there that you think are moving forward. Then you quickly realize you can only get by with that at certain times of the year. What I like to do is go into really jamming singles or double deeps and pull nice, healthy, big splits out of that. 3 frames of brood, 2 frames of food. Those go into a 10-frame single with either a frame feeder and a bucket, extra frames, and give them time to build out where they will always be big enough to be able to withstand some of that early robbing that happens. Let them get big enough to do what they need to do rather than making 1 and 2 frame splits over and over and over and over again. You do that, you gamble and roll the dice too hard on that at the wrong time of year, and you get humbled quickly. And next thing you know, you've got slime outs and wax moths and all this equipment and money tied up that is not moving forward. And even if it was, it's not going to move forward in a big enough way to create any kind of an asset going into the wintertime. So I like to go into big singles and deeps and pull out as many 4-frame, 5-frame splits as I can, always leaving the same amount behind so that everything can keep moving on. And why that's also important is you can keep things moving at the same pace. The worst thing is to have a 1 or a 2-frame split here and a 4-frame split here and a 7-frame split here and a this and a that, because nothing is ever on the same page. You're constantly always chasing, are they a liability? Are they an asset? Are they upside down? Are they going to get robbed out? So don't get in a hurry to get to a certain magic number. Get in a hurry to have a number of healthy, prolific splits. because I think those go a lot further. There's something that happens. I'm sure there's maybe some really smart person who's got this figured out, but there's something with the strength and the numbers and the exponential growth inside of a colony where it reaches some kind of an equilibrium where they can perform at a level that these small dink colonies can, especially if you're making splits. Because more than likely, if you're making splits, especially in the same yard, you start moving brood around too close in the same yard, you lose the field force. You're lucky to get the nurse bees to stick on comb where the brood is, even if you lock them up. And so for this window of growth, even if they accept the queen, you're at a deficit because now you don't have field force mature enough to go out and gather. Now you've got these splits on a food crutch to keep them moving and keep them going. But if you can find a ways to make the splits in the way that you're much faster going to be in that field force to nurse bee and brood force cycle, those colonies are going to be self-sustaining much faster than the splitting the tar out of everything or nobody has what they need. That can become a real problem. Don't get me fired up, Bruce. Actually,
Yeah, I
Grayson,
just
that
agree.
was a great question.
It was a great question, and not that I never will do a weaker split. Like, for example, last year I needed to get some queens mated, and I more as for mating nukes. I went ahead and pulled a couple little 2-frame splits out. They aren't ideal, but they were effective to get some queens mated. But it's just I just have gotten to the point where I really much prefer stronger splits. Like you say, I don't mind splitting into a nuke, but I want it to be a strong enough split that it's going to survive. And it, like you made a good point, Greg. If you put them in the same area, if you split it 4 ways exactly, you're going to end up with, a lot of the field force is going to go back to the original spot. And so you're going to have 3 weak ones and one that's pretty strong. Now, 2 years ago, I did that on a pallet there in Slocum. I had a super strong colony, had some queen cells in it, and I just tried it. It was a big double deep. I just basically split the bees out 4 ways, shook a lot of bees into the 3 that weren't the original spot, and I think I found the queen. I'm not sure I think I did, but I made sure there's a queen cell in each one of them, and then they all survived. Of course, the one in the original spot was stronger because most of the field force came back, but they all survived and ended up. I think a couple of them actually made honey for me that year. So, but it's just I prefer stronger splits, and I prefer to leave the donor colony strong enough to make honey.
Yeah, that's
I prefer
nice.
to.
Yeah.
I don't want to take away. I don't want to completely destroy the ability for honey production out of that particular colony. I like right now what I'm doing. I'm pulling splits. That's what I've been doing the last few weeks. Is pulling splits for 2 reasons. Number 1, to increase. Number 2, to weaken the strong colonies so they don't swarm. And so I can easily pull a real strong nuke or 2 out of a really strong colony, and that colony is not going to skip a beat. It may hopefully will prevent them from swarming, and it'll give me 2 new colonies that'll have the potential to make some honey or to become future colonies for me. So anyway, we've kind of beaten a dead horse here, but I do prefer also stronger splits. There is a time and a place sometimes for maybe weaker splits, but I just don't fool with those much. I try to keep them strong. I much prefer those stronger splits.
Weak splits is like chasing swarms. You end up being upside down on time and the actual yield of it. You might think you've got something there at first, but in a month, check back and see what you actually have. So I'm with you. Let's be smart about it and know that when you're pulling from these big colonies, you're pulling from an asset that is turnkey and ready to rock and roll. They're already like max production. So if you're going to pull from that, if you pull from it in a way that maybe thins them back, that prevents them from swarming, they can still keep producing and moving forward. It's like dipping a cup into an endless river of bees. You can always be pulling from that. If you do go through and make 3 or 4 splits out of this thing, you can do that. Just be careful. Bruce, let's talk a lot more about splits and let's get into the nitty gritty here in the next couple of weeks because we could spend, hours
We could
just talking about all that. So I don't want to. And I don't think we're going to be able to get to all the questions tonight. Let's try to jump in on a couple of these before we go tonight. Tim Greer asks, any new updates on all the losses across the country? If you've heard anything, leave it in the comments below. If you're listening to this afterwards, leave it in the comments below too. As of right now, newsflash, I don't think anybody knows anything yet other than more bee losses are being reported. I'm trying to think. Someone just sent me, let's see, who was that? Let's see. The one and only Ohio queen bee, Miss Nina Bagley, sent me a report today. She's a Franklin County, Ohio inspector. Great lady. She does all beautiful work with bee culture, doing the women in beekeeping articles, and got to see her speak at the Tri-County. So great job, Nina. She's awesome. She sent me the Adirondack Beekeepers Report Surge and Hive Loss. So you get into some areas of this country, especially up in the Northeast, like there's still snow on the ground up in the Northeast. Like they're just getting into the bees and starting to report all these bee losses. We are not out of the woods yet. What is exactly going on? Still, nobody knows. We've got a lot of speculations. And the more that I talk with folks across the country, I've got more than an inclination on what's going on. And it's not as easy as we think. But I don't think there's no official new updates that I'm aware of as of yet. But we are obviously kind of wanting to know as soon as we can to help put a good path, a good plan forward. Mr. Paul Hale Hives asks, Bruce, did Big Red get superseded after you drenched her? I gave 2 coats on Saturday. Wow, that's nice, Paul. Bigger the glob, better the job. You heard it here first, right, Bruce?
She actually did really well she did great. Now I will say that colony was maybe my meanest colony that year. They blew up. They did well that year. And then on into last year, they started to produce. They were doing really well. And then I think they went into queen crisis. They superseded her, and the hive ended up just kind of dying out. And I wasn't upset about that really, because they were so nasty and mean. So I was okay with them just dying on out. It was a really cool story, and it goes to show you how resilient those queens can be. It ended up being extremely just a thriving and very strong colony, but just they staple you. They staple your ankles, and so I'm not too upset that she's gone. But that was a neat story, and that video I did where it showed her getting, recovering from being painted was really it's kind of one of my favorite videos. It was kind of fun.
Comeback story, Bruce. Let's go.
It was cool. Yeah, it was cool. But yeah, she is no longer with us, and hopefully not a whole lot of her descendants are with us anymore, because they were mean as they could be.
Bruce, can we just have a moment of silence for?
Sure.
Oh, look at all that, boy. There's no hair up there anymore. Hey, you too. Well, that's good.
Some turtle wax, and we got some turtle wax for us.
Boy, get that light off there. Going to call someone's going to go blind. Hats off. Moment of silence to Miss Big Red. May she rest in peace. All right, boy, we look better with the hats on, Bruce. Let's not do that again.
That's absolutely
good thing. It's only me and you watching. All right, I've got a bunch of questions. We can't go all night. But I want to thank Mr. Dwayne Bittinger. I'm not sure how to say the last name, but I really want to thank you for that $20 super chat. Really, really appreciate your support. And again, I want to say thanks to all the folks who are tuning in tonight, who tune in every week on the Bruce's Bees YouTube channel, the Castle Hives YouTube channel. Even though he's getting sunburned, enjoying sand between his toes,
Dwayne.
Dwayne
is the one
Brian.
Dwayne is the one who won the instant VAP. If you remember.
Oh, nice, Dwayne. You should be getting that. Let's just say that got the royal treatment. You'll see when you get it. I hope you like it. You should probably have that. Let's see, what's today? Today's Wednesday because we're doing the stream team, Bruce. You should have that probably tomorrow, maybe, if you don't already have it. Dwayne, really appreciate you. Thank you, sir. And let me just say, this particular guy, Mr. Clay Bunner, I don't know, I can't get to a photo fast enough, but what a super cool dude. So special hat tip to Mr. Brother Clay Bunner. Really appreciate you. Thank you, sir, for your super chat, and thank you for your fellowship. All right, we've got, okay, here we go. Buckle up. You ready? All right, put our thinking hats on. Make sure they're straight, lined out right. Okay, here we go. From Mr. J.W. Irwin himself. Okay, so yesterday I combined 2 separate, very small colonies. Okay, I'm tracking. Both with queens in the same 5-frame nuke box. One is marked green and the other is marked white. Which queen will survive? Folks, you're going to have to go to the Soapstone Farms Honeybees YouTube channel to find out. Let's see. Green and the other is marked white. Which queen will survive? Bruce, what do you
I
think?
don't, I don't know. If he's marking them according to year, the green is the younger queen, but maybe that old queen is around so long because she's just tough and mean and nasty. So maybe she's the tougher queen. So I don't know. That's a good question. My guess would be green because she's younger, but you just never know.
Mm-hmm.
However, since both colonies were very small, maybe neither queen is that strong. Maybe they were both weak. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think therefore I am, and right now I'm confused because I would say based on queen vigor, I would say green. But if both are very small colonies, why are both very small colonies?
Mm-hmm.
If they're both very small colonies, then I would say that she's probably not as vigorous as she probably should be. And if there's a small colony with a white queen, is she not as vigorous as she should be? Or is she maybe a Caucasian? Or what's the story, Morning Glory? That's what we don't know. So here's what I would say.
Oh, Tom's got a comment. Tom says
How can I get to there fast
it's
enough?
the
Let's
very it's
see.
the very bottom. It's the very bottom. The white queen and the green queen were both from last year. He just had a white pen handy.
Oh, he's just saying what he's doing is he's trying
He's
to
telling us
ruffle up.
the rest the
He's
rest
trying
of the
to
story.
this is Tom the instigator, right? You got to understand that Tom is a great instigator. And let me say, it takes one to know one, Tom. So I see what you're doing there, and I like your style. I would say that the best way to solve this is for everyone to go over to the Soapstone Farms Honeybee YouTube channel, like, subscribe, and then make sure you just hound the guy. I mean, constantly. Like, we need an update and we need it now. That's what everyone should do. Go over to that and hashtag we need an update and we need it now. Or just for short, hashtag Greg said so. Let's put some pressure on Mr. JW Irwin. Now the world wants to know. This might be the most important question of the night.
Tom says nope. Serious information. I think
Oh
Tom
my
actually.
gosh.
I think he actually went up there and paid a visit to JW. I think he was up there working with him a few days ago. I'm not sure if
Oh
maybe he was
my
there when this
goodness
all happened.
gracious. Is that really the story? See, we
Either
assume too
way,
much.
either
We
way, Greg.
assume. See, you know what they
Either
say of assumption. You figure the rest out.
either way, you got to watch it to know. Because I mean, I
All
have
right.
no idea.
You just don't know. You just don't know. And if they're both marked like that and they're both that weak, well, we've got some Houston, we've got a problem. All right, let's see if we can get through a couple more of these. Oh my gosh. Where's Brian at? Brian, how do we clear the ones that we've already gone through? It's getting stacked up in here. Okay,
Just
let's see.
click on the star. Yeah, click on the star and it'll go out of there.
Okay, just click on the star. Okay, boom, boom. All right, let's see. Here's an interesting screen name. Hey, I'm just trying to help. Are you? Okay, good, thank you. Hey, Greg, what type of copper do you dip your hives in? And is it considered a chemical treatment of the hive? And can it leach into the honey? Great question. It is a safe copper. It is not copper sulfate or naphthenate. It's not the old school way of mixing things with diesel and all that. So you're good to go there. Is it considered a treatment of the hive? I don't really know what you mean by treatment of the hive, like of the hive body or the bees that are in the hive. I don't know what you're leaning towards on that. And can it leach into the honey? No, it cannot leach into the honey. It's safe. It's impregnated into the box, and then these boxes are also wax tipped, so yet another layer of protection. Why we do that is just to provide one more layer of antifungal protection of the box. And to be honest, you know what I really like about it? It just looks really, really cool. So there's that. So thanks for your concern. Thanks for the question. And thank you for the screen name. Hey, I'm just here to try to help. Mr. Philip Montgomery has a question. Question: when you equalize your hives, how many frames of brood do you leave in the mother hive, giving the frames of brood away? How many times do you equalize? I'm in southern Ohio. Bruce, what do you think? How many frames of brood do you leave in the mother or the donor hive that you're giving the frame of broods away from? How many frames of brood do you leave back in the donor hive, Bruce?
I don't have a specific number. It just depends on the overall strength. and I just kind of play it by ear. It varies. I like to have at least probably 3 or 4 frames left in there, depending on the time of the year too.
Right.
But sometimes when I pull if I weaken the colony, like if I've got a double deep, like Grayson's question earlier, if I have a double deep that's booming and I pull 2 splits out of there, lots of times I'll drop, if I've got drawn comb, I'll drop it back in there so that queen can build it back up quickly. If that makes sense. And so they won't be held back for long if I've got it available. But I like to see 3 or 4 frames of brood left behind. And if not, then I like to make sure they have plenty of room for her to lay if it's a real strong queen and she's doing well. It depends on what you're doing though. If it's right at the honey flow and you're trying to, or right at the nectar flow, you're trying to pull splits out or whatever, then you may want to leave more because then they'll continue to build that field force up. But if it's early in the spring and you have plenty of time to build up, then you can weaken a little bit more. I think I think you want to leave plenty of strength in there later in the year, later in the summer. I don't know. I mean, I think you want to allow those bees to be as maximize their strength as much as possible. Is kind of my thought on that. So, but early in the spring, they're pretty forgiving. You can pull quite a bit from them and still be okay.
Awesome.
What about you?
What about me?
You're the Ohio guy, so
I would say it really depends on what's going on because if first off, I'm probably here's the way I look at this. I'm not Bruce. You grew up on a farm. Did you guys ever have any dual-purpose chickens?
You mean
like a speckled Sussex or birds that are dual or cattle that are like a Dexter? Don't even get me started on those.
By dual purpose,
animals that are multi
like,
or they're dual purpose, like a chicken, like they can lay eggs and they can also have meat. And then they can make a little meat. Yeah, every chicken is meat. However, like a Cornish, for instance, or heavier breasted. So a dual purpose chicken is supposed to have a little bit more robust of a breast and also lay eggs. Here's a news flash. They don't do either one well, right? Either Cornish had much better, larger breast meat. In Buff Orpington, for instance, or Rhode Island Red, they lay way more eggs than the dual purpose, right? So sometimes trying to do 2 things with the same unit, can they do it? Yeah, but they do either one well? My answer is no. So let's not try to have a dual purpose hive. Either dedicate that hive to honey production, and if you're pulling anything out, it's just to pull them back to keep them from swarming as they're going through the honey flow, or go through there and strip them down to where they can still cruise up and make it for the wintertime, but you're pulling enough assets out where it's not going to be a big deal. I'm not going in and pulling splits from colonies that I'm going to be pulling honey off of, not intentionally. I'm going to go through and humble colonies, but make sure they have enough behind they can keep growing up. I'm not worried about a honey crop off those. Or I wait until I've got a honey crop, we have a treatment, and then as we're doing downsizing splits later in the year, then we can start pulling things out, but we're still leaving them strong enough to get through the wintertime. That's how I kind of look at it, because I just don't have time to be, and no one does if you really think about it. Like, we can't be going in and micromanaging colonies. We need to make as few visits, and there needs to be universal equalized across the yard consistently, all the things that we're doing. And hey, if you get some wild cards and one hits the trees and one's too weak, but you just saved yourself 8 days of labor that year, who cares? Like that's part of it.
Yeah, mine build up so quick. Like right now, I pull a lot of the reason I pull the splits. It kind of is a dual purpose reason for splits is to make increases, but also it helps keep them out of the trees. So that's one reason I do it. But it's a long enough build up season here that they will. Right. It's almost like they do better. If you split them, they almost do better. It's weird because if they're packed in there and if they're growing, they're getting really big and they're thinking about swarming and all of a sudden they do swarm, then you're in trouble. But if you can pull them back and just give them more work,
back just enough,
give them some foundation, give them some things to do while they're waiting for the honey flow to kick in. Then when it kicks in, it's like they just whip it into high gear. And then you have your split sitting over here that you're building up, maybe for this year's honey flow, maybe not, maybe for increase for next year, but you've pulled those out. Hopefully you've saved them in the trees and you also have a nice crop. And so that's kind of the reason I do it. The whole idea, if you're a honey producer, the whole idea is to have the most efficient, largest field force available when the honey flow hits. And if they're in the trees, that's not going to happen. And so you just kind of have to play that by ear. I'm sure every area is a little bit different, but that's kind of how I run it. My ideal thing is to have a double deep coming out of winter that's boiling with bees. Take 1 to 2 small, reasonable size splits out of it, kind of strong splits, but reasonable. Like early, like I did this year, like in February or early March if I can. Give them a month to build up, and then back into that double deep and fill it up, which they'll do. And then, man, they're just ready to take off and go. That's kind of how I run it. But it does vary because, like you said, Greg, some colonies aren't as strong. Some are in deep and mediums. Some may just end up in a single deep. But that's kind of my goal, so to speak, every year.
Yeah.
That allows me also to replace any losses I have, for next year. And it's just kind of worked out well for me. I'm not really trying to grow into a much bigger beekeeper now. I'm trying to kind of stay in that 100 to 150 range. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm going up to about 140, 150 and dropping down to, if I kept them all alive in the winter, I'm not sure what I would do. I guess I'd pull splits to sell, but
that's called nuke sales. Yeah.
But it's just worked well for me. The last 2 or 3 years, I've kind of hit that little rhythm and it's worked out really well for me.
Yeah.
Notice what happened 2 years ago is I quit sending them off to the almonds. That's made it a lot easier too, not having it, because sometimes they come back from the almonds really strong, and then it's just like, that's a whole nother mad rush of management you have to do. And with my time restrictions, it's hard to do too. So I've really enjoyed this year and last year being able to just kind of manage my bees, figure it out. And I'm trying to become a better beekeeper. I still don't have it all figured out, but I'm getting better, I hope.
Second part of that question, how many times do you equalize in a year?
I don't go in my colonies thinking I'm going to equalize today, but like last weekend, I got down to Slocum and I'm like, I've got to pull some brood out of these colonies. So what I did was I did equalize a little bit. I took some, in the really strong, super strong double deeps I was worried about maybe swarming. I just pulled a couple frames here and just put them in some of my new splits, of brood, just put them in there. And so that'll help those build up faster and hopefully slow those other ones down a little bit. But I probably should do more equalizing, but I don't do a lot of going through and just trying to make everything equal. I just never have really done that. And it would probably be good, but I just never have done that a lot. It's just kind of hard for me to do that. I know it's a good idea. Some people really try to do that, make everything look the same, but I haven't done a lot of that. More than anything is to help strengthen and, weaken colonies that are too strong is really the reason I do it. And it's worked out perfectly for me the other day because I had colonies that could have used the brood and others that needed to be humbled a little bit. So that's why I did it.
Awesome. All right. Let's try to, we don't have time to get through all of these tonight. Let's pick these last three. We'll try to cruise through. CD Cook 77. And thanks everybody for all your questions and all your support and for being here tonight. We really appreciate the questions. We're going to take these last three. Reversing deeps, yes or no? This is year 5 for me in West Central Indiana. I've never reversed boxes before, but I've always wondered if I should. Thoughts? What do you think, Bruce? Do you flip boxes?
Well, there's a couple schools of thought on this. Number one is, and there's a guy up in Tim Ives up in Indiana that he runs a triple deep system. His bees must be incredible. They're super strong, but he just lets them do everything in triple deep. Well, his theory is the bees will move up in the wintertime, which they do. And as they begin to reproduce in the spring, they start moving back down. They start putting honey up top and move back down. And that happens much of the time. Sometimes, though, you'll just have hives that just want to stay. The colonies want to stay up in that second box, and they just never move down. I've actually when I've removed my honey supers sometimes at the end of the honey season in a double deep or even a deep and a medium, usually a double deep, I'll pull the honey supers off, pull the queen excluder off, start investigating down in the hive to see what's going on. And I've pulled that second box off times before, and there's been nothing ever happened in the bottom box. You can just tell it's been empty. There's nothing down there.
Yeah,
they'll almost be honey bound in the second box, and no bees in the bottom box hardly. It's just strange. And so I kind of play it by ear. I don't do a lot of it. I do some of it. Like if I go through, if I get a chance in February when we start cracking open hives, really going through them pretty heavy, and I've got a hive that has no bees in the bottom and they're all in the top. Sometimes I'll reverse them, but most of the time I don't. Most of the time they're well into the bottom box, even if they're not all the way to the bottom, but there's kind of a crown, like their cluster is down into the bottom box a little bit, and I don't want to split the brood. But most of the time they do move down as they get stronger, especially if you don't start stacking supers up too soon. It's all tricky though. If If you don't stack them up soon enough, they'll swarm. If you stack them up too soon, they may just go up and not. You know what I mean? It's just kind of crazy how it's just such a game. But I do some. I don't go out there with the plan of doing it hardly ever. But if I see a situation where I think it's appropriate, I'll do it. But probably 80%, 90% of the time, I don't do that. What are your thoughts on
Well, I
I
think
know.
when you get up north, you see more of this than probably where you're at. I mean, similar concept, but the bees tend to work up into that honey super, and then if as they're up there, and then we get like dead nettle kicks in or maple starts to kick in hard, and we start to get some of the brambles and tree crops start to come in. Sometimes they will be up there, and they don't want to seem to kind of come down during those like early trickle flows. Um, I don't like to just reverse boxes, but I do prefer to do this. And I will kind of reorganize the box. And yeah, it takes me a little bit longer, but I will get the queen and brood down in the middle of the bottom box. I'll bump her out with, maybe 2 or 3 more frames of brood, and then pack the food out on the outside and put 1 frame of brood in the top box above all of that. And then have some food and then some opened comb above that. That seems to work. So I kind of reorganize the brood nest, put it where I want it for production's sake, and that tends to work out really well. But if you just flip those, sometimes you're just as upside down flipping them as you were leaving it alone. But if you reorganize the brood nest and get it to be in a more productive state, I think that works out pretty well. But it does take
Yeah.
a little extra labor.
I used to have a theory. I'm not sure if this is valid or not. I haven't thought about it much lately, but do you think age of queen has anything to do with whether or not they drop down or they stay in the top? I've always wondered if kind of the older queens just kind of stay up there in the top, and they don't, and the younger ones might be more vibrant and maybe move down. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but
I
that's just
don't
a thought
know.
I had.
I saw a lot of that goofiness last year, but when I saw that, gosh, what a garbage. And that sounds terrible to say we had such a garbage end of the year, but I mean, it was a major challenge. We seen things that we had never had before, where we had bees in the top boxes and boxes below empty in the fall time. Like it was just massive
It's strange, yeah.
knuckleheadedry. And so in that situation, now what do? You're not going to be flipping and reorganizing stuff, so you're actually like downsizing, but you're downsizing in a weird way where there's nothing going on in the bottom. It actually, the bottom boxes turn into robbing liabilities, because if there's any trace of protein or food sources at all in the bottom box and all the bees are in the top, they're just using the first box as a ladder system, as an elevator to get to the second. I mean, that is just no good. So we were pulling all those off, pulling those out, and that's a nightmare. But yeah, it's a great question. A lot of really awesome questions tonight.
Hey, Paul has a great comment from Hell Hives. He says, "Timing is everything, and I got no rhythm."
Can't carry two and
That
even
is
need to add a handle.
me
That's
for
great.
sure, right there.
Yeah. All right, got a couple more here, Bruce. Let's see. Let's see if I can do this. Look at Tom is setting me up. He's going to get me fired up. He knows what he's doing. Tom, the instigator. Greg, what is your preferred method for introducing a mated queen into a small split? Tom, I think you know where I'm probably going to go with this, but my new all-time favorite way to do this is over a double screen board, over a strong colony in my neck of the woods, because I can keep that heat going right. 2 things. Number one, I can keep the heat funneling right up through that double screen board into that small colony. Number one, actually, this is a threefold, maybe more. Let's just go with 3 tonight. Number one, I got the heat going up. Number 2, I'm wasting a lot less material. I don't have to go find another 5-frame box or a gesture box or a pro nuke or a little nuke box over here or this or that. I'm simply double screen board, deep on top, frame feeder, split, queen, lid, boom, golden, no problem. Or a bucket feeder on top of that. That works out really well too. Okay, so heat, reasons for not tying up and wasting equipment on a split yet. And then I had a number 3 in my head on this, Bruce. Number 3. Number 3, if it goes bad, or when it goes bad, because sometimes it doesn't work, the queen doesn't take, anything happens, guess what? You pull the double screen board out and just recombine the mess, let them sort it out, no big deal. So that's what I like to do on a small ones. If it's early in the year, you can do no wrong when you're in those early heavy flows. Yeah, and you can get by with putting, a handful of bees in a queen cell. You can get by with that in a very short window. But the more experience I get, and the more honest I am with my previous experience of doing things a million other different ways, you got to be smart at the time of year that you're risking so many resources. So a double screen board, I mean, just yet another beautiful use of one. Great question, as always. Let's be honest, Bruce. Did that question really come from Tom? I think it came from Melissa, to be honest. Cody Walker, CNA Honey, Greg, how's your hives looking? Will you still be able to have queens this year with your losses? Great question. Yes, we're still going to be completely squared away on queens. And actually, you know what the silver lining is with some of these losses? We have bees in various areas. And I'm actually really, really excited. As terrible as this sounds, this is going to sound horrible. All right. But we always have to find the upside and the silver lining. And we've talked about this a million times. Like every year, right? If you are humble enough and you've got eyes to see, there is always a lighthouse colony in a yard. It is always the one that is going to teach you something or help move your operation forward, right? It's a beautiful thing that I feel like God has put in us to see and to observe. This year, I've got a yard where I lost, in one of these yards, 99 out of 100. Okay, 99 out of 100 are gone, but that one that's there, like that pumps me up, and that the joy from that overflows. The woe is me that the 99 are gone. Why? Because for some reason, these are the 1%ers. This colony is a part of the 1%ers that the wind, the nutrition, everything else that was possibly plaguing this yard of 100, no factor, no big deal. Like we're cruising through, they look great. So though that particular one is going to be a prime candidate for breeding stock and for breeding material this year. So I am really pumped up. So we're going to be looking great on queens this year. Like I mentioned earlier, if you didn't catch the whole thing, we have gone to a private queen offering and private queen list as of this year. We want to make sure that we take care of all of our customers that are our return customers. Once we get through that, we will open up orders for new customers. But if you are not a current or an existing customer and you want to get on our queen list, still reach out to us and let's get you on the list to call when there's availability. Go to our website, naturesimagefarm.com, click the About Us, hit the Contact tab, shoot us a message, and in that subject heading, put Queen List Request, and we will organize that, and we will make sure that you are on the call list or the contact list when we get to that stage of the year when we've got that availability. We're a small outfit, guys. We can only do so much, and what it takes for us to raise a couple thousand well-mated queens is an enormous undertaking, and so with the demand that we have, we could probably produce 4,000 or 5,000 queens, but we can't do that and do it well. So we are going to make sure that we don't get crazy with the growth just because we've got the demand. We're going to put out high quality queens, and then as we grow and have the opportunities to upscale what we can offer, then it'll be a little bit different. But if we do anything else, we do anything different, the best way to stay in the know if that plan changes is to go right to our website, and you'll see this really annoying guy. You can't see that he's bald because he's wearing a hat, but he's holding these packages of bees. It's our subscribe newsletter. And that ugly dude's me that comes up. Hit that subscribe list, put your email in, and if there's any changes and we can get queens out to you sooner, you'll be notified through that. So a great question. Thank you. And then the very last one that I've got here that we can get to tonight from Mr. S. Reese. I wonder if that is Mr. Shannon Reese, but just got y'all's package. Greg, everything looks great and is greatly appreciated. I like the message, be the lighthouse. It reminds me of Jesus calling everyone to repent. Hey, I want to thank you for that comment. And that is exactly what Be the Lighthouse means. And it's right out of Matthew. Let your light shine before others so that when they see your works, they give the glory to God our Father in heaven. That's what it is about. That's what it means to be the lighthouse. It's not about patting us on the back. It's not putting attention on us. We are literally the vessel of letting God's light shine through us so that folks can see his love and his goodness through us. Hands down, period.
I think that might be Scott Reese that got the package that
Scott
won
Reese.
the EnduraHive kit. I think he's the one
Oh,
with EnduraHive.
cool. All right. Okay, cool.
That might
Okay,
be
you got the whole schmear. Great. Awesome.
Anyway, awesome.
Good deal.
Man.
Bruce, what's going on this week with Bruce's Bees?
Just gonna see if I can, if it doesn't, the weather lets me, I'm gonna get out there and try and do some bee work and see what happens. We talked about some of that earlier in the chat, but I'm gonna try to do the I think do the cloakboard thing. I'm not sure if probably don't know that I'll film it the first time because I want to figure it out and I don't want to do something, have other people try it and not work. So I want to kind of get that under my belt first.
That's responsible, Bruce.
And just going to try to go in these colonies and see how they're doing. And the bee inspector, I think, is going to meet with me Friday, and we're going to kind of go through some colonies as well. They're at Appleton Farms, and just kind of trying to stay ahead of these bees. If they're really still putting in nectar and things, and if it looks like the flow is kicking off, I may start stacking a few boxes on, some honey supers on, maybe a few of them, and just kind of try to stay ahead of them. I do believe I'm also going to try to I'm going to try the Viroxan. Go ahead and start putting that in the colonies because it's a long, what is it, a slow release oxalic acid treatment, just to try and keep those mite counts low, because typically I'm in pretty good shape this time of the year, and by the time June or July roll around, I start having a problem, and so I'd like to keep those numbers down. So I ordered some. I think I'm going to start putting that in them as well. We'll see what happens. I got a lot of work to do, and there's only so many days in the week and so many hours in the day. So we'll see what I can get done.
We can only do so much. That's a fact. And when we accept that, then we say, okay, what can we do the best in the time frame that we have, and just let all the other things go and just focus on that
Yes,
for sure. Well, Bruce, next week we'll get a little update from Brian. I'm sure he'll just be, he'll have Eli on. Like you probably don't remember this cartoon. Do you remember the cartoon Inspector Gadget? Do 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 do. And then the bad guy, I don't think you ever saw his face, but it was the claw or this. Anyways, you saw this big hand thing on the spikes, right? He's always petting this cat, right? I can see Brian. Brian next week is going to be sitting in his chair with Eli, and he's going to just be petting this cat. He's just going to be sunburned and just looking so well relaxed. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. He's going to love it. It's going to be awesome. Brian, hope you're having a good time. Hope you're still not listening to this on the beach somewhere, because Tara's not going to be happy if you're still listening to this beach at this late in the night. But anyways, we're thinking of you. We miss you. We'll see you next week. Coming up for me this week, man, I've got so many really fun stuff to talk about, to launch. So many great collaborations. I am so excited to not only bring to the YouTube channel, but to bring to the Nature's Image Farm supply shop. So many really cool things. This coming week, I'm speaking at the Medina Beekeepers on Monday the 17th here in Ohio, and we're going to be talking about queen rearing the easy way, right? I think everyone should consider raising queens, and I want to talk to folks about how to do that successfully, the easy way. We're really looking forward to that talk, Medina Beekeepers. The next day, Tuesday the 18th, heading over to the Fairfield County Beekeepers Association, and I'm going to talk about getting off to a great start. And a lot of that's based on hard lessons learned. What can we do to move things forward? What's some things to look out for? How can we get these bees off to a really, really, not just a good start, but a great start? That's Tuesday's conversation. And then a really, really cool thing going on Thursday, the 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern, a really fun collaboration with HiveAlive. They've asked that I be a part of this webinar where we're going to get into the weeds a little bit more on their product line, features and benefits what is right for you. We're going to have a Q&A with a lot of tips and tricks with me and also Dara Scott from EnduraHive. We'll drop links. We'll share that with you guys. That is going to be a really neat learning opportunity, the likes of which have never been seen. It's going to be great. Thursday, the 20th, 8 p.m. Eastern. Be there or be square. Can't wait to get back to the shop. The shop is open this Friday and Saturday. We're now going to be open, ready to rock and roll the rest of the season. And let's just say you want to be there and you want to see some of these new products that you've never seen anywhere else. They don't exist anywhere else other than Nature's Image Farm. Stop by the shop. Let's take a look. Let's talk about bees. Let's talk about how can we get you on a good path moving forward. And if I can pull it off, I'll throw it out here. And I'm going to do my best to make this happen. But I'm going to have the microscope set up, okay, on Saturday. I'm going to have the microscope set up on Saturday. If you have a dead, if you're in Ohio and you're listening to this and you're part of the Stream Team crew and the Nature's Image crew, if you've got a dead out, put a handful of those bees in a Ziploc bag and then bring them out to the farm. What we're going to try to do is do some nosema sampling, and maybe it's one other thing that we can rule out, right? Hey, maybe we find nosema spores with your bees, and now we at least know, hey, here's a major thing that happened. Now what do we do moving forward? But if we can get in there and say, hey, no spores, we can at least rule that one thing out. That's at least one thing that we know wasn't a contributing factor. So again, if you've got a dead out, put them in a Ziploc bag, bring them out to the farm on Saturday, and let's dig in and see, and let's just rule out nosema. We've got a microscope. Why not? Let's go in there. Let's leverage some strengths. Let's see what we can see. Help you guys with any questions that you have. How do you move forward? What's next? How do I order bees? What's available? Stop by the shop this weekend. Let's talk about it, and let me help you do the best I can to help you put a plan together for this year. I'd love to see you this Friday, Saturday, Nature's Image Farm, 10 to 5. Bruce, is there anything else that we need to talk about before we go tonight? We're in overtime, 7 minutes over.
I think we're good, man. We've covered a lot.
I think we're great. Bruce, we're not good. I think we're great. Why are we great? Because all these folks are still hanging in.
Absolutely.
Making bee chats great again.
Great.
Hey, thanks so much for joining the Stream Team Beekeeping Chat tonight on the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel. Next week, 8 p.m. Eastern on the
Castle Hives
YouTube channel. You heard it here first. Thanks again. As always, we want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.